Hello and welcome to the Drowsy Architect. We tell the stories of the world's greatest buildings, slowly, gently, as bedtime stories for grown-ups. The narration is calm, the music is soft, and if you fall asleep before the end, that is exactly what we are here for. Tonight, we travel to a hilltop in southeastern Turkey, where 12,000 years ago, before farming, before pottery, before the invention of the wheel, our ancestors built a temple, the oldest monumental structure ever discovered, a place so ancient and so impossible that it rewrote everything we thought we knew about the origins of civilization. Now settle in and let us begin. There is a hill in southeastern Turkey where the wind never quite stops. It comes across the Harran Plain from the south, dry and ancient and unhurried, and it climbs the slope of this low, rounded hill, and it moves through the grass, and it carries with it something, a feeling, a weight, as though the air itself remembers what happened here. You are standing on that hill now. It is night, late, the kind of late where the world has gone quiet, where the last sounds of the day have faded into nothing, and all that remains is the wind and the stars and the deep, heavy silence of a place that has been waiting for 12,000 years. The stars above you are extraordinary, out here, away from the glow of cities, away from the orange haze that blankets the modern world. The sky is not merely dark, it is alive. The Milky Way spills across the heavens like a river of light, thousands upon thousands of stars, so dense and so bright that you can almost feel their weight pressing down on you. The sky has a texture here, a depth, layer upon layer of light, ancient light, reaching you from distances that the human mind was never designed to comprehend. These are the same stars. That is the thing that catches in your throat. That is the thing that makes you stand very still and breathe very slowly. These are the same stars that shone above this hilltop 12,000 years ago, when people who had never planted a seed, who had never built a wall, who had never fired a pot or forged a blade, came here to this place and did something impossible. The wind touches your face. It is warm. It smells of dust and dry grass and the faintest trace of something herbal, wild thyme perhaps, growing in the cracks of the limestone that lies just beneath the surface. The limestone that is not natural bedrock, but the buried remains of something extraordinary. Below your feet, beneath the soil and the rubble and the accumulated silence of 100 centuries, there are stones, massive stones, pillars carved from limestone, some of them 5.5 meters tall, some weighing more than 10 tons. They stand in circles. They are carved with animals, foxes and lions and vultures and snakes. Some of the pillars have arms, hands. They are not merely columns. They are figures, silent, watching figures, standing in their stone circles in the dark beneath the earth. Exactly where their builders placed them, before the pyramids of Egypt were even a dream, before Stonehenge, before the first city in Mesopotamia, before the wheel, before bronze, before pottery, before everything. This is Gobekli Tepe, and it changes everything we thought we knew about who we are. Let yourself settle now. Let the image hold you gently. The hilltop, the stars, the wind across the plain. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing else that requires your attention, no tasks waiting for you, no messages to answer, no worries that need tending, just this ancient hill and this story and the slow, easy rhythm of your breathing. Breathe in gently and feel your chest rise. Feel the air cool and smooth as it enters your lungs. Breathe out slowly and let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. Let the small muscles around your eyes relax. Let the tension in your forehead dissolve, like mist burning off in the morning sun. You are here, you are comfortable, you are warm beneath your covers, and this story will carry you, the way the wind carries the grass, gently, steadily, into sleep. For most of the 20th century, the hill was nothing, a low mound in the landscape east of the city of Sanliurfa, rising perhaps 15 meters above the surrounding plain. Not dramatic, not imposing, just a gentle, rounded shape in the terrain, a little higher than the land around it, covered in grass and scrub and the occasional wild pistachio tree. The locals called it Gobekli Tepe, which translates roughly as Potbelly Hill, a gentle, unremarkable name for a gentle, unremarkable shape in the terrain. Shepherds grazed their flocks on its slopes. Farmers plowed the fields around its base. The hill was part of the landscape, the way hills are always part of the landscape, present but unnoticed, like a face in a crowd. In 1963, a joint survey team from the University of Istanbul and the University of Chicago passed through the area. They were cataloging archaeological sites across southeastern Turkey, part of a large-scale effort to map the prehistoric remains of the region before modernization and development erased them. They climbed the hill. They walked the surface. They noticed some broken limestone slabs protruding from the soil. They noted some flint fragments scattered on the ground. And they wrote in their report that this was probably a medieval cemetery, perhaps Byzantine, perhaps Ottoman, nothing terribly exciting. They took a few photographs, they made a few notes, they marked the site on their map, and they moved on. For 31 years, nobody came back. The hill sat in the landscape, quiet and patient, keeping its secret beneath the soil. The shepherds continued to graze their flocks. The plows continued to turn the earth at its base. The wind continued to move through the grass, and 12 meters below the surface, the oldest monumental structures ever built by human hands stood in their circles of darkness, waiting. And then, in the autumn of 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt read that old survey report. Schmidt was not an ordinary man. He was careful and methodical, as all good archaeologists must be, but he also had an instinct, a feeling for landscape, a sense for the way that ancient peoples interacted with terrain, the way they chose their sites, the way certain hills and valleys and ridgelines spoke to something deep in the human psyche. He had spent years working at another Neolithic site in Turkey called Nevali Quarry, a remarkable settlement with T-shaped pillars and carved reliefs that had been submerged by the waters of the Ataturk Dam in 1992. He knew this region intimately. He knew its soils and its stones and its geological history. He knew what the pre-pottery Neolithic looked like when you found its traces on the surface. And when he read the description of the broken limestone slabs and the flint scatter on Potbelly Hill, something stirred in his mind. A recognition, a spark. Medieval cemeteries do not produce flint tools. Medieval cemeteries do not have massive worked limestone blocks. Something was wrong with the old survey's interpretation. Something was very, very interesting. He drove to the hill. The road from Sanliurfa was rough and unpaved in places. The landscape was dry and brown, the rolling steppe of Upper Mesopotamia, baked by the late autumn sun. He parked at the base of the mound and climbed the slope. He looked at the ground, and he knew. He knew immediately. Later, he would say that the surface of the hill was littered with flint, not just a few pieces, a carpet of it, thousands upon thousands of worked flint fragments, the unmistakable debris of a Neolithic tool-making site, blades, scrapers, cores from which flakes had been struck, the technological signature of people who lived 10,000 years ago, spread across the surface of the hill like confetti after a celebration. And mixed in with the flint, fragments of carved limestone, pieces that had been deliberately shaped, pieces with markings on them, smooth surfaces that bore the unmistakable traces of human intention. This was not natural weathering. This was not medieval masonry. This was something far older and far more significant. Schmidt walked the hill for a long time that day. He studied the shape of the mound, which was not natural. It was too regular, too symmetrical, too deliberate. Natural hills do not form this way. This mound was artificial. It was a tell, a mound created by layer upon layer of human activity accumulated over centuries. Thousands of years of building and demolition and rebuilding, compressed into a low, rounded shape in the landscape. Schmidt would later recall that moment with the quiet understatement of a scientist who understood the magnitude of what he was seeing. He looked at the flint, he looked at the limestone, he looked at the telltale shape of the mound. This was not a medieval cemetery. This was not a natural hill. This was something else entirely. "This is a game changer," he said. He was right, but even Schmidt, even in that first electrifying moment of recognition on that dusty hillside in southeastern Turkey, could not have imagined just how much it would change. He was standing on the roof of the oldest temple complex ever discovered, a place that would force humanity to rewrite its own origin story. The excavations began in 1995, slowly, carefully, with the patience that archaeology demands. Schmidt secured funding from the German Archaeological Institute, assembled a small team of specialists, and began to peel back the layers of soil that covered the hilltop. Trowel by trowel, bucket by bucket, the painstaking work of uncovering the past, where a single careless stroke can destroy 10,000 years of evidence. What they found stopped the world. Beneath the surface, arranged in great circles, were massive T-shaped pillars of limestone. They stood upright in the earth, some of them 3 meters tall, some 4, some 5.5 meters from base to crown. They were precisely carved, smoothly finished. Their surfaces were not rough or merely functional. They were worked to a degree of fineness that spoke of considerable skill and tradition, and on those surfaces, in low relief, were animals, dozens of animals, foxes, boars, cranes. Lions, snakes, scorpions, vultures, spiders, gazelles, wild cattle with long, curving horns, ducks, insects, creatures that crawled and flew and hunted and grazed across the surface of the stone, as though the pillars were windows into a wild, teeming world. The carvings were not crude. They were not the tentative scratchings of people just learning to work stone. They were confident and detailed and beautiful. The animals were rendered with a sureness of line that spoke of long tradition, of artists who knew exactly what they were doing. The musculature of the boars, the delicate legs of the spiders, the fierce curve of a lion's jaw, these were the works of masters. And the pillars themselves, when the team looked more closely, had arms, carved in relief on the narrow sides of the T-shapes were human arms, bent at the elbow, hands resting on the front face of the pillar. The pillars were not merely architectural elements. They were stylized human figures, standing in their circles, watching, silent, their flat tops representing heads, or perhaps the absence of heads, or perhaps something else entirely that we cannot fathom. The shock that rippled through archaeology was slow at first, a murmur at academic conferences, a footnote in journal articles, and then overwhelming, because when the organic samples found in the fill around the pillars were sent for radiocarbon dating, the numbers that came back were impossible. The oldest structures at Gobekli Tepe dated to approximately 9,600 BC, roughly 11,600 years ago, roughly 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza, roughly 6,000 years before Stonehenge, roughly 5,000 years before the first cities of Mesopotamia. This was not merely old, this was older than civilization itself, older than farming, older than pottery, older than metal, older than the wheel, older than permanent settlement, older than writing by about 7,000 years, older than any monument anyone had ever imagined could exist. These monumental structures, these carefully carved, precisely erected 10-ton stone pillars, had been built by hunter-gatherers, by people who foraged for wild grain and hunted gazelle with flint-tipped spears, by people who carried everything they owned on their backs, by people who had no fixed address, no government, no writing system, no formal economy, by people who, according to everything we thought we knew about human history, should not have been capable of this. It was, as Schmidt quietly said, a game changer. Take a breath now, a slow one. Let the air come in gently, filling your chest, expanding your rib cage, and let it go just as gently. Feel the warmth of your bed around you, the softness of the pillow beneath your head, the weight of the covers on your body, pressing you down into the mattress with a gentle, reassuring pressure. You are warm, you are safe, you are lying in the dark, and the story is carrying you the way a river carries a leaf, slowly, easily, with nowhere particular to be. The leaf does not steer, it does not struggle. It simply rests on the surface of the water and lets the current do the work. Be the leaf, be carried. Let the ancient river of this story take you where it will. To understand why Gobekli Tepe matters so profoundly, you need to understand where it sits in the world, not just geographically, though that is important too, but in the larger story of how human beings became who we are. Southeastern Turkey, the upper reaches of the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, the northern arc of what historians call the Fertile Crescent, that great curve of productive land stretching from the Persian Gulf through Mesopotamia and up through Syria and down through Lebanon and into the Jordan Valley and the land of ancient Palestine. This is the cradle. This is where it all began. Agriculture, domestication, settlement, civilization itself. The entire trajectory of human history that led from wandering bands of foragers to the world you live in now. It started here, in this landscape, on these hills, along these rivers. 12,000 years ago, this landscape looked nothing like the dry, brown, semi-arid steppe you see today. The climate was different, profoundly different. The last great ice age, the period geologists call the Pleistocene, was ending. The vast glaciers that had covered northern Europe and much of North America were retreating. Meltwater was flooding the rivers. The rain belts were shifting, and the world was warming, slowly, unevenly, but unmistakably. The hills around Gobekli Tepe were green, not lush tropical forest, but open woodland. Pistachio trees and almond trees dotted the slopes. Scattered oaks provided shade and acorns. Between the groves, grassland, rich, deep, fertile grassland that stretched across the plain like a golden carpet. And in that grassland, life, abundant, diverse, extraordinary life. Herds of gazelle moved across the plain in their thousands. Persian gazelle, graceful and swift, their tan flanks catching the sunlight as they ran. They were the dominant herbivore of the region, so numerous that their tracks wore paths into the earth. The sound of 1,000 hooves on hard ground, a low, rolling thunder that you could feel through the soles of your feet. Wild auroch grazed in small groups among the trees. These were the massive ancestors of modern cattle, standing nearly 2 meters at the shoulder, with great sweeping horns that could span 1.5 meters from tip to tip. They were powerful and dangerous and magnificent. To hunt one was an act of extraordinary courage. Wild boar rooted in the underbrush along the stream beds, heavy, muscular, bristling with coarse hair, their tusks curving upward from their lower jaws like pale scimitars. They could weigh 300 kilograms. They could kill a man. Onager, wild asses, trotted in bands across the open ground. Hares darted between the grass tussocks. Partridges burst from cover with a clatter of wings. Red foxes slunk through the twilight, their eyes gleaming amber in the fading light. And in the grassland itself, growing wild and abundant and untended, were the grains: wild einkorn wheat, wild emmer wheat, wild barley, wild rye, the ancestors of every loaf of bread you have ever eaten, every bowl of pasta, every pint of beer. They grew here, naturally, without human intervention, dense stands of golden grain ripening in the autumn sun, their heavy heads nodding in the wind. This was abundance. This was a world where a skilled hunter-gatherer could not merely survive, but thrive, where there was meat in the herds and grain in the fields and nuts on the trees and fruit in the thickets and fresh water in the rivers and stone in the hills for tools. A world of such richness that people could afford to stop, to stay, to turn their attention from the daily business of not dying and think about something larger. There is a reason that many scholars have noted the parallels between this landscape and the Garden of Eden described in the book of Genesis. The Fertile Crescent, the land of plenty, the place of first things, the place where humanity's story shifted from one kind of existence to another. The book of Genesis places the Garden of Eden between 4 rivers, 2 of which are the Tigris and the Euphrates. The region around Gobekli Tepe lies precisely in this zone. It is the very heartland of the biblical paradise. And at the center of that paradise, on a low hill overlooking the plain, Gobekli Tepe, the place where humans first decided that survival was not enough, that they needed something more, something sacred. The wind would have been the same then, moving across the grassland, bending the wild wheat, carrying the scent of thyme and warm earth and the distant musk of auroch herds. The people who came here would have felt it on their faces, just as you might feel the cool air of your bedroom now, gentle and constant and unremarkable, just the world breathing, just the planet turning its face to the sun and the stars and the endless procession of days. Let that wind carry you now. Let it move through your thoughts the way it moves through the grass, not pushing, not pulling, just passing through, gently, easily, carrying away whatever it is you have been holding onto today, whatever small worry or unfinished thought is still circling in your mind. Let the wind take it. Let it blow across the plain and disappear into the distance. You do not need it tonight. Tonight, there is only the hill and the story and sleep. Let us go closer now. Let us look at what was actually built on this hilltop, because the details are where the wonder truly lives. The main structures at Gobekli Tepe are oval or circular enclosures, each one defined by a ring of those massive T-shaped pillars. The pillars are set into low stone walls that connect them, dry stone walls built without mortar, creating enclosed spaces roughly 10 to 30 meters across. In the center of each enclosure, two larger pillars stand facing each other like sentinels. These central pillars are the biggest of all, up to 5.5 meters tall, weighing up to 10 tons or more. They dominate the space. They are the heart of each circle. The excavated enclosures have been labeled with letters. Enclosure A, Enclosure B, Enclosure C, Enclosure D. Each has its own character, its own arrangement of pillars, its own particular selection of animal carvings. Each was built at a slightly different time, over a span of perhaps 500 years. They are not identical. They are variations on a theme, like movements in a symphony, each one exploring the same ideas in a slightly different way. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have identified at least 20 of these enclosures across the Hilltop. Only 4 have been fully excavated. 4 out of 20. We have seen perhaps a fifth of what is there, perhaps less. Think about that for a moment. Archaeologists have been working at this site since 1995. 3 decades of careful, methodical excavation, and they have barely scratched the surface. The hill is full of secrets, full of buried circles and hidden pillars and carvings that no human eye has seen for 10,000 years. The pillars themselves are remarkable objects. Each one was carved from a single piece of limestone, quarried from the bedrock of the plateau on which the hill sits. The quarry has been found roughly 100 meters from the main enclosures. It is a dramatic sight. You can still see unfinished pillars lying in the bedrock, half-carved, abandoned. Their outlines are clearly visible, channels cut into the rock on 3 sides, the 4th side still attached to the mother stone. The quarry workers were in the process of undercutting them when they stopped. Why they stopped, we do not know. Perhaps the stone cracked. Perhaps the project was abandoned. Perhaps something else called the workers away. One of these unfinished pillars, had it been completed and freed from the bedrock, would have been nearly 7 meters long and would have weighed around 50 tons. 50 tons, carved from bedrock, with nothing but stone tools and flint chisels and patience that defies imagination. The finished pillars were shaped into that distinctive T form, a wide, flat top sitting on a narrower, rectangular shaft. The T-shape is unmistakable and highly consistent across the site. It is clearly a deliberate design, not an accident of quarrying or a pragmatic structural choice. The flat top creates the impression of a head, or rather, of broad shoulders seen from the front. The surfaces were smoothed and finished to a remarkable degree, in some cases approaching a polish. And then, once the pillar was shaped and smoothed, the carving began. The animal reliefs on the pillars are extraordinary. They are not scratched or incised into the surface like graffiti. They are carved in low relief, meaning the background stone has been carefully chipped away to leave the animal figure standing proud of the surface by a centimeter or 2. This is a sophisticated technique. It requires planning. You must visualize the finished image before you begin. You must know which areas to remove and which to leave, and you must execute with precision. Because limestone does not forgive mistakes, every chip you take cannot be put back. Foxes appear frequently. They are shown in profile, sleek and alert, their ears pricked forward, their long bushy tails trailing behind them. Sometimes they appear in pairs, facing each other across the width of a pillar, as though in conversation or confrontation. Their eyes are watchful. Their posture is tense and alive. Boars are common, massive, bristling boars with prominent tusks and heavy, muscular shoulders. They are carved with a visceral energy, a sense of barely contained power and imminent danger. You can almost feel the heat of the animal, the coarse texture of its hide, the way it would lower its head and charge. Snakes wind across the surfaces of the pillars, long, sinuous, curving, sometimes alone, a single serpent flowing down the face of the stone, sometimes in groups, clusters of snakes tangled together or arranged in parallel lines, descending. They seem to pour down the stone, as though descending into the earth itself. Cranes stand tall and still. Their long necks are gracefully curved in S-shapes. Their wings are sometimes spread, sometimes folded. They have an elegance that contrasts sharply with the ferocity of the boars and lions. Lions crouch and snarl. Their claws are extended and clearly delineated. Their mouths are open, showing teeth. They radiate menace. They are guardians, protectors, or perhaps threats, warnings to those who would approach without the proper reverence. Scorpions appear, their segmented bodies rendered with anatomical precision, their curved tails raised, their pincers spread wide. They are small creatures rendered large on the stone, elevated to monumental status, which suggests they carried a significance far beyond their physical size. Vultures soar with outstretched wings, their flight feathers carefully rendered, their necks extended. Some carry what appear to be round objects, spheres or discs, in their talons or near their bodies. These round objects have been the subject of intense debate. And spiders, delicate, precise spiders with their 8 legs radiating outward from their bodies in perfect symmetry. They are rendered with a naturalistic accuracy that suggests close observation. These people watched spiders. They studied them. They found meaning in their webs and their patience and their silent, methodical hunting. But it is the human elements that are most haunting. Those arms carved on the sides of the T-pillars, the narrow sides of the T, the sides that would correspond to the edges of a human torso if the pillar were a person, bare arms in low relief. The arms are bent at the elbow, the hands, with fingers carefully delineated, individual fingers rest on the front face of the pillar, which would be the belly or the front of the body. Some pillars also have belts carved around their middles. Loincloths hanging from the belts, and what may be fox-skin garments, the tails of foxes dangling from the belt line. These pillars are people, stylized, abstracted, towering people, standing in their circles, wearing their animal skins and their belts, with their hands folded solemnly across their stomachs. Watching, they are not portraits, they have no faces, no features on the flat surfaces of their T-shaped tops. They are presences, embodiments, perhaps ancestors, perhaps spirits, perhaps gods, if that word has any meaning for a culture that predates organized religion by millennia. Watching what, watching whom, we do not know. The builders left no writing, no explanatory text, no user manual for their temple. They left only these silent figures in their stone circles, and the animals that swarm across their surfaces like a bestiary of the ancient world, and the questions that we may never fully answer. The floors of the enclosures were finished surfaces, not bare earth, not simple packed dirt. In some cases, they were made of a kind of terrazzo, crushed limestone mixed with a binding agent, perhaps lime plite, and smoothed and polished to a hard, gleaming finish. In other enclosures, the floors were carved directly from the bedrock, leveled and smoothed to create flat, even surfaces. These were not rough clearings in the dirt. These were carefully prepared ceremonial spaces. Floors you could have eaten off. Floors that required knowledge and skill and significant labor to create. And here is a crucial detail, a detail that changes everything about how we interpret this place. There are no domestic structures at Gobekli Tepe, no houses, no storage rooms, no cooking hearths with the accumulated ash and charcoal of daily meals, no middens, those telltale rubbish heaps that always accumulate where people live, no post holes for tents or shelters, no grinding stones worn smooth by the daily preparation of grain. This was not a settlement. Nobody lived here permanently. There is no evidence of permanent habitation at all. This was a place people came to, a gathering place, a pilgrimage site, a ceremonial center where people from across the region converged, perhaps seasonally, perhaps for specific events, to perform rituals we can only guess at. A temple, if you will allow the word, though we should be careful with it. We do not know what rituals were performed here. We do not know what beliefs were held or what prayers were offered or what bargains were struck with whatever powers these people recognized. We know only that this place was special, that it was built with enormous effort, that it was not a home, and that it mattered deeply to the people who built it. You are drifting now. You can feel it, the gentle pull of sleep, like a tide that moves so slowly you barely notice it, drawing you outward, away from the edges of the day, away from the sharp lines and hard surfaces of the waking world, into something softer, something deeper, something that has no edges at all. Let your body feel heavy against the bed. Let your arms rest where they are, wherever they have fallen, and let them be still. Let your legs go soft and heavy. Feel the muscles of your calves relax. Feel the tension in your ankles dissolve. Your feet are warm. Your hands are warm. Everything is warm and still. The story will continue, but you do not need to hold on to it. You do not need to remember the details. You do not need to pass a test on Gobekli Tepe in the morning. Just let the words wash over you, like the wind across the ancient plain, like water over smooth stones, and drift. Now let us sit with the impossibility of this place. Let us really feel the weight of what was achieved here, because it is the impossibility that makes Gobekli Tepe so extraordinary. The builders of Gobekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers. They had no metal tools of any kind, no copper, no bronze, no iron. They had no wheels. They had no draft animals, no oxen or horses or donkeys to pull heavy loads. They had no pulleys or levers or cranes or any of the mechanical advantages that later civilizations would develop. They had stone, they had flint, they had rope, probably woven from plant fibers or twisted from animal sinew. They had wooden beams and poles. Though wood does not survive well in the archaeological record, and they had their hands, their muscles, their backs, their will. With nothing more than this, they quarried pillars from the living bedrock of the hill. They shaped them into precise geometric forms. They carved them with intricate animal reliefs that still take your breath away 12,000 years later. They transporting them, some weighing 10 tons or more, 100 meters from the quarry to the building site, and they erected them, upright, in precise circles, with their bases set into carefully prepared sockets carved into the bedrock floor. How? This is the question that haunts every archaeologist who has stood among the pillars. How did they do this? Quarrying is the first challenge. Limestone is not the hardest stone in the world, but carving a 5-meter pillar from solid bedrock with nothing but flint tools is a task that defies easy comprehension. You must cut channels into the rock on 3 sides of the pillar, channels wide enough for a worker to kneel in, deep enough to free the full thickness of the stone. Then you must undercut the pillar from below, crawling into narrow trenches to chip away the stone beneath the block. Lying on your back in the dust and the dark, striking upward with your flint chisel, inch by inch freeing the stone from the earth that bore it. Every stroke of the tool removes a tiny chip of stone, a flake the size of your thumbnail, millions of tiny chips, billions of tiny strokes, day after day, week after week, month after month. The work is monotonous and exhausting, and there is no shortcut. There is no way to speed it up. You simply keep chipping. Some experimental archaeologists have attempted to replicate the quarrying techniques of Gobekli Tepe, using replica flint tools on similar limestone. They estimated that carving a single pillar from bedrock would have taken a team of perhaps a dozen workers several months of sustained effort. Just the quarrying, not the shaping, not the smoothing, not the carving of the animal reliefs, not the transportation, not the erection. Just freeing the raw stone from the bedrock in which it had lain for millions of years. Then the transportation. A 10-ton block of limestone does not move easily, it does not slide, it does not roll. It sits on the ground with the full stubborn weight of its mass, and it resists, even on flat ground, even with rollers made from tree trunks and ropes woven from plant fibers. Moving such a weight requires dozens of people pulling in perfect coordination. One person stumbles, one rope slips, and the stone stops, or worse, it tips, it rolls, it crushes. The route from the quarry to the enclosures is roughly 100 meters. It is not flat. It involves a slight uphill gradient. The logistics are daunting even by modern standards. Without wheels, without cranes, without any mechanical advantage beyond the simplest levers and inclined planes. And yet they did it. They moved the stones, repeatedly, pillar after pillar, ton after ton, across that 100 meters of rough ground, up that gentle slope, to the waiting circles. Then the erection. Standing a 5-meter, 10-ton pillar upright in a socket requires precision and immense coordinated force. The socket must be the right depth and the right width. The pillar must be maneuvered into position, probably using a ramp of earth and rubble, tipped gradually upward, supported by ropes and wooden braces, until it slides into the socket and stands upright. One miscalculation and the pillar topples. One misjudgment and years of work shatter on the ground. The builders must have developed techniques for this. Techniques passed from master to apprentice. Techniques refined over generations. We do not know exactly what those techniques were, but they worked. The pillars stand to this day exactly where they were placed 12,000 years ago. And this raises the deeper question, not how, but who, and how many, and how were they organized? Moving a 10-ton stone requires a minimum of several dozen people pulling simultaneously. Quarrying and carving requires skilled workers, people who have spent years learning the craft of stone working, who can read the grain of the limestone, who know where to strike and how hard. Feeding all of these people, dozens of quarriers, dozens of haulers, skilled carvers, overseers, requires a reliable and substantial food supply. Coordinating them requires organization, planning, communication, leadership, a shared vision that everyone understands and believes in. Hunter-gatherers, as we traditionally understood them, lived in small mobile bands, perhaps 20 or 30 people. They followed the herds and the seasons. They carried their possessions. Their social structures were relatively egalitarian and informal. Decisions were made by consensus. There were no kings, no priests, no ruling class, no permanent hierarchy. Gobekli Tepe required something different. It required the coordination of hundreds of people, perhaps from many different bands scattered across a wide region, coming together over extended periods to work on a shared project. It required someone or something to organize the labor, to plan the sequence of construction, to allocate tasks, to keep the workers fed and motivated, to maintain the vision across years and decades of sustained effort. This was not supposed to be possible, not for hunter-gatherers, not for people without agriculture, not for people without permanent settlements or centralized authority or surplus food stores or any of the structures we assumed were necessary for large-scale cooperative endeavor. And yet the pillars stand. The evidence is in the ground. The impossible happened, and we must change our understanding of the past to accommodate it. Let that thought settle for a moment. Like a stone sinking through still water, you do not need to wrestle with it. You do not need to resolve it. Just let it be, like the pillars themselves, standing in the dark, silent and patient and utterly sure of their own existence. Breathe in slowly. Feel the air enter your body like cool water filling a vessel. Breathe out, let the breath carry away whatever tension remains. In your neck, in your jaw, in the space between your shoulder blades. Let it all go. You are sinking deeper into the mattress, deeper into the warmth, deeper into the slow, steady rhythm of rest. This brings us to the revolution, the great overturning of assumptions that Gobekli Tepe forced upon the world of archaeology, the idea that changed our understanding of what it means to be human. For a century or more, the story of human civilization went like this. First came farming, the domestication of plants and animals. This was the foundational step, the prerequisite for everything that followed. Farming allowed people to settle in one place because they needed to tend their fields. Settlement led to surplus food because a good harvest produced more than a family could eat. Surplus food led to specialization. Because some people could stop farming and become potters or weavers or builders or priests, specialization led to social complexity, classes and hierarchies and governments. Social complexity led to religion, formalized, institutionalized systems of belief, and religion, eventually, in its grandest expressions, led to monumental architecture, temples, pyramids, ziggurats, stone circles. Farming, then settlement, then religion, then monuments. This was the sequence. It was clean and logical, and it made intuitive sense. It was taught in every university, written in every textbook, accepted as fact by generations of archaeologists and historians and anthropologists. You cannot build a temple until you have a stable food supply. You cannot organize a labor force until you have a settled population. The practical must come before the spiritual. The belly must be full before the soul can dream. Gobekli Tepe shattered this sequence entirely. Here was a monumental site, a place of immense architectural ambition and sophisticated artistic achievement, built before farming, before settlement, before pottery, before metal, before everything we thought was necessary for this kind of endeavor. The sequence, it seemed, was wrong, or at least incomplete. The spiritual did not follow the practical. The spiritual came first. The dream came before the bread. Klaus Schmidt proposed a radical new idea. What if the desire to build a sacred place, a gathering site, a monument to shared belief, was not a consequence of farming, but a cause of it? What if the temple came before the farm? Think about it. Imagine hundreds of hunter-gatherers converging on Gobekli Tepe, coming from bands scattered across 100 kilometers of steppe and woodland, working together for months at a time, quarrying stone, hauling pillars, carving animals, erecting circles. They need to eat, all of them, every day. The wild game is plentiful. but hundreds of hunters working a single area will quickly deplete the herds. The wild grain grows abundantly in the surrounding hills. But harvesting wild grain for hundreds of workers is labor-intensive and unpredictable. It depends on weather and season and luck. What if some clever, observant person who had noticed that grain grows where grain has fallen, had the idea to plant the grain deliberately, to ensure a reliable supply near the building site, to tend it, to water it, to harvest it at the right time, to store it for the months when the work was hardest and the need was greatest, not because farming was a natural evolution of human behavior, not because it was an inevitable next step, but because the temple needed to be fed. And here is the piece of evidence that makes this hypothesis so compelling, so electrifying, that it keeps archaeologists awake at night. Wild einkorn wheat, one of the first plants ever domesticated by human beings, the very grain that launched the agricultural revolution, was first cultivated within 30 kilometers of Gobekli Tepe. Genetic analysis of modern domesticated einkorn wheat, using sophisticated DNA sequencing techniques, has traced its wild ancestor to a specific population of wild grass growing on the hills of the Karakadag mountain range. The Karakadag range rises to the north of the Harran Plain. It overlooks Gobekli Tepe. You can see it from the hilltop. 30 kilometers, a day's walk, perhaps less for a fit hunter-gatherer moving at pace across familiar terrain. The earliest archaeological evidence of domesticated einkorn wheat comes from sites in this very region, from this very period, from settlements that date to just after the main building phase at Gobekli Tepe. The timing is perfect. The geography is perfect. The coincidence, if it is a coincidence, is almost too perfect to be accidental. It is not proof. Archaeology rarely offers proof in the way that mathematics does, but it is a convergence of evidence so striking, so perfectly aligned in time and place and circumstance, that it demands serious consideration. The temple may have come first. The desire to worship, to gather, to build something magnificent and enduring may have driven people to invent farming, to feed the dream, to nourish the vision, to sustain the builders while they carved their impossible pillars from the bedrock of an ancient hill. Religion did not follow agriculture. Religion may have created it. The oldest temple in the world may have given birth to civilization itself. Let that thought settle over you like a blanket, like a warm, soft, heavy blanket that presses gently against your body and makes everything feel still and safe and quiet. You do not need to hold the thought. You do not need to analyze it or argue with it or turn it over in your mind. Just let it be there, like the stones beneath the hill, quiet, patient, certain of nothing, open to everything, waiting. Breathe in and feel the air fill your lungs, cool and smooth and easy. Breathe out and let everything go soft. Your hands, your feet, your wrists, your ankles, the muscles of your face, the space behind your eyes, the place in your chest where worry sometimes lives. Let it all go soft. Let it all go still. You are sinking, gently, inevitably, like a stone settling into warm sand at the bottom of a clear, still lake. There is nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to solve or fix or figure out. Just this, just rest. Just the slow, warm drift of a body that has finally given itself permission to stop. Let us return to the carvings, because they deserve more attention. They deserve wonder. They deserve the kind of slow, careful looking that reveals layers of meaning beneath the surface, like the layers of Gobekli Tepe itself. Each animal that appears on the pillars seems to carry meaning beyond simple representation. These are not decorative motifs chosen for their aesthetic appeal. They are not pretty pictures carved to fill empty space on a stone surface. They are symbols, messages, perhaps stories compressed into single images, perhaps warnings, perhaps prayers, perhaps maps of a cosmos that we can no longer read because we have lost the key. The vulture is one of the most prominent and recurring figures. Vultures appear on multiple pillars across multiple enclosures, large, spread-winged, powerful birds rendered with unmistakable accuracy. In many ancient cultures around the world, from Tibet to Persia to the indigenous peoples of North America, vultures are associated with death, not in a fearful or negative way, but in a transformative way. They are the creatures that carry the dead from the earth to the sky. They consume the mortal flesh and release the immortal spirit. In some traditions still practiced today, the dead are deliberately exposed to vultures on high platforms or mountaintops, a practice called sky burial or excarnation. The body is offered up. The vulture accepts the offering. The soul is freed. At Gobekli Tepe, the vultures sometimes carry round objects, circles, spheres, discs. Some scholars believe these represent human heads, or more precisely, human skulls, the skull as the seat of consciousness, the container of the soul, the vulture as the psychopomp, the carrier of souls to the heavens, bearing the skull soul upward on its wide, dark wings. It is a reading, not a certainty, but it aligns remarkably with what we know of death practices in this region during this period. At later Neolithic sites near Gobekli Tepe, archaeologists have found modified skulls that were carefully separated from the body after death, plastered with clay to recreate the features of the face, painted with ochre, set in special locations within the settlement. The skull cult, as it has been called, was widespread in the pre-pottery Neolithic. The living kept the heads of the dead among them. They maintained a relationship with the departed. The snakes are equally suggestive. They appear frequently, winding down the surfaces of the pillars, sinuous and flowing, always descending. In many ancient cosmologies across the world, the snake represents the underworld, the realm below, the chthonic powers of the deep earth. The snake lives between two worlds, above the ground and below it, visible one moment and vanished the next, slipping into cracks and holes in the dark spaces beneath stones. At Gobekli Tepe, the snakes seem always to descend. They flow downward on the stone, into the earth, toward whatever lies below. If the vultures represent the sky, the realm above, and the snakes represent the underworld, the realm below, then the pillars themselves, the standing human figures with their folded hands and their silent, featureless faces, represent the world between, the human realm, the living, standing at the axis of the cosmos, at the meeting point of above and below, mediating between the sky and the earth, between the vulture and the snake, between the dead who have risen and the powers that dwell in the deep. This is a cosmology, a three-tiered universe carved in stone 12,000 years ago. Sky, earth, underworld, and humans standing at the center, arms folded, watching, waiting, holding the worlds together. The foxes are more mysterious. They appear in pairs on several pillars, facing each other across the stone, or positioned symmetrically as though guarding a threshold. In the mythology and folklore of many cultures across Eurasia, the fox is a trickster, a liminal creature, a dweller in the margins, neither fully wild nor fully domestic, neither dangerous like the lion nor harmless like the hare. The fox moves between worlds, between day and night, between the human settlement and the untamed wild. It is clever and elusive, and always slightly beyond your grasp. Perhaps at Gobekli Tepe, the foxes served a similar symbolic role, guardians of thresholds, watchers at the boundaries between one state of being and another, between the profane world outside the enclosure and the sacred world within, between the world of the living and the world of the dead, between waking and dreaming. One striking detail supports this interpretation. Fox bones are among the most common animal remains found at the site. The builders were killing foxes in great numbers, but the analysis of those bones suggests that the foxes were not being eaten, or at least not primarily consumed for their meat. The fox bones show signs of special treatment, deliberate processing, careful handling that differs from the treatment of food waste. Perhaps the foxes were sacrificed as part of rituals performed at the site. Perhaps their skins were worn by participants, fox skin cloaks or headdresses that identified the wearer with the power of the fox. The carvings on some pillars seem to depict exactly this, fox skin garments hanging from the carved belts of the T-shaped figures. The fox as a totemic animal, a creature of deep spiritual significance, a bridge between worlds. And then there is Pillar 43, the Vulture stone, the most analyzed, debated, and argued over single piece of carved limestone in all of prehistoric archaeology. Pillar 43 stands in Enclosure D, the largest and most elaborate of the excavated circles. Its surface is densely covered with carvings. A large vulture dominates the composition, wings outstretched, neck extended, rendered with dramatic energy. Below and to the right, a scorpion with its tail curved upward. Above the vulture's wing, a circle, a disc, held in a position of prominence near the junction of the vulture's wing and body. Elsewhere on the pillar, smaller figures, other birds. A headless human figure at the bottom of the composition, with an erect phallus, arms splayed, clearly dead or in some altered state. The scene is complex and crowded and deeply strange. Some scholars have proposed that Pillar 43 is a star map, not a casual arrangement of favorite animals, but a deliberate encoding of astronomical information. They suggest that the animals represent constellations, that each creature corresponds to a group of stars as the builders would have seen them in their sky. The vulture may correspond to what we now call Sagittarius, or perhaps to the constellation of the Summer Triangle. The scorpion almost certainly represents Scorpius, whose shape in the sky has been associated with a scorpion by many different cultures across many different eras. The disc, the round shape near the vulture, may represent the sun, positioned among the constellations to mark a specific moment in the solar year. If this reading is correct, then Pillar 43 may encode a specific date, a specific arrangement of stars and sun that would only have been visible at one particular time. Some researchers, using sophisticated astronomical software to calculate the precise positions of stars and constellations as they would have appeared 12,000 years ago, accounting for the slow wobble of the Earth's axis called precession, have proposed that the date encoded on Pillar 43 corresponds to approximately 10,950 BC. Why would the builders want to record that date in stone? One theory, controversial and hotly debated, but undeniably fascinating, is that it corresponds to the onset of the Younger Dryas. The Younger Dryas was one of the most dramatic climate events in the recent history of the Earth. After thousands of years of gradual warming, following the last ice age, the climate suddenly and catastrophically reversed. Around 10,900 BC, temperatures in the northern hemisphere plummeted by several degrees within a matter of decades. Glaciers that had been retreating began to advance again. Rainfall patterns shifted. The lush green landscape of the Fertile Crescent became drier and harsher. Animal populations shifted. Plant communities changed. The abundant world that the hunter-gatherers of the region had known for generations was suddenly under threat. The younger Dryas lasted for roughly 1,200 years before the warming resumed. Its cause is debated. The most widely accepted theory involves the disruption of ocean currents in the North Atlantic, but a more dramatic hypothesis, supported by a growing body of evidence, suggests a comet impact, or rather, a series of airburst events caused by fragments of a disintegrating comet striking the Earth's atmosphere. A thin layer of nanodiamonds, microspherules, and other impact markers has been found in geological strata dating to this period, spread across multiple continents, from North America to the Middle East to parts of Europe. Did the builders of Gobekli Tepe witness such an event? Did they see fire in the sky? Did they feel the shockwaves? Did they watch their green, abundant world grow cold and harsh? And did they carve a record of what they saw, or what they were told by their ancestors? Onto the surface of Pillar 43, the headless human figure at the bottom of the pillar, arms splayed, clearly dead, has been interpreted by some scholars as representing catastrophe, death on a cosmic scale. A world turned upside down. This is speculation. It must be said clearly and honestly. We do not know what Pillar 43 means. We may never know with certainty. The builders left no Rosetta Stone, no dictionary, no instruction manual for decoding their symbols. But the possibility, the tantalizing, goosebump-praising possibility, that these hunter-gatherers carved a cosmic calendar on a limestone pillar 12,000 years ago. That they were tracking the movements of the stars and recording cataclysmic events in stone is enough to make you pause, to make you sit down, to make you look at the deep past with entirely new eyes. The night is deepening now. Can you feel it? The darkness settling around you like a soft garment, pressing gently against your skin. The darkness outside your window is the same darkness that once filled those stone enclosures on the hilltop, the same darkness that settled over the Harran Plain 12,000 years ago, when the last fire was banked to embers and the stars came out in their thousands, and the carved animals on the pillars seemed to move and breathe in the flickering orange glow. Let your eyelids grow heavy. Let them close if they want to. You do not need your eyes for what comes next. The story is still here. It will not leave. You can follow it with your ears, with that part of your mind that listens without trying, that receives without grasping. The way you listen to rain falling on a roof, not catching every drop, not counting, not analyzing, just feeling the rhythm of it, the wash and the patter and the gentle, endless fall. Your breathing has slowed. Good, let it slow further. Let each breath be a little longer than the last, a little deeper, a little softer, like the wind across the ancient hill, steady and unhurried and endlessly, endlessly patient. Around 8,000 BC, roughly 1,500 years after the oldest enclosures were built, the people of Gobekli Tepe did something extraordinary, something that may be as remarkable in its own way as the building itself. They buried it, deliberately, intentionally, with immense and sustained effort. They filled the enclosures with rubble, thousands of tons of it, broken limestone, flint tools, some of them perfectly good, still sharp, still usable, animal bones, fragments of carved stone, earth and gravel and debris. They packed it in by hand, basketful by basketful, layer by layer. They did not simply abandon the site and walk away, leaving it to the slow, patient work of erosion and vegetation and time. They actively, painstakingly, methodically buried the entire complex. They filled the enclosures from floor to rim. They covered the carved animals. They buried the silent stone figures up to their necks and then over their heads. They sealed the polished terrazzo floors beneath meters of debris. They turned the hilltop from a living ceremonial center into a mound, a tell, a closed book. And they walked away. Why? This is one of the deepest mysteries of Gobekli Tepe, one of the questions that Schmidt wrestled with for the rest of his life. Why would the builders, or their descendants, generations later, bury their own creation? Why would they deliberately conceal the greatest construction project the world had ever seen? Several theories have been offered. None is entirely satisfying. All are worth considering. Perhaps the site had served its purpose. Perhaps the rituals it was built for had run their course. The cycle of ceremonies had reached its natural conclusion, and the enclosures were sealed as a final act of closure, a funeral for a sacred place, a burial for a burial ground. Perhaps the culture changed. Over the centuries since the first enclosure was built, the people of this region were undergoing a profound transformation. They were beginning to farm, beginning to keep animals, beginning to settle in permanent villages. The old ways of the hunter-gatherer, the seasonal migrations, the great communal hunts that brought bands together from across the region, the ceremonies at the hilltop that marked the turning of the year, were giving way to something new: village life. Domestic routine, fields and fences and permanent homes with hearths and stores and all the thousand small anchors that tie a person to one piece of earth. Perhaps Gobekli Tepe belonged to the old world, the wild world, the world of movement and gathering and shared sacred spaces. And when the new world of settlement and farming arrived, the old world was respectfully put to rest. Perhaps there was a belief, deeply held and widely shared, that the site needed to be sealed, that the spiritual power contained within the enclosures was not something that could simply be left exposed to the elements and to the casual gaze of passers-by. It needed to be contained, held safe, kept underground where it could not be disturbed or diminished or desecrated. We do not know, we may never know. The builders took their reasons with them into the silence of the past. But the burial had an extraordinary and perhaps unintended consequence. By filling the enclosures with rubble, the builders preserved them. The pillars were protected from the erosion that would have destroyed them over 10,000 years of exposure to wind and rain and sun and frost. The carvings were shielded from the slow, grinding patience of weather. The rubble formed a protective cocoon, an accidental time capsule. A perfect conservation environment that kept Gobekli Tepe intact across 100 centuries. When Klaus Schmidt's team began to carefully remove that rubble in the 1990s, they found the pillars still standing, the carvings still sharp and clear, the animal reliefs still showing their original tool marks, as fresh and legible as the day they were carved. The burial that hid the site from the world also saved it for the world. The act of concealment was also an act of preservation, and because it was preserved, we can see it today. We can stand among the pillars, as you are standing among them now in your mind's eye, and feel the weight and the wonder of 12,000 years pressing gently on our shoulders. Here is something that puzzles the archaeologists, something that runs against every expectation, something that makes the mystery of Gobekli Tepe even deeper than it first appears. When you dig down through the layers of an archaeological site, from the more recent to the more ancient, you expect to see a progression. You expect the later structures to be larger, more refined, more technically accomplished than the earlier ones. That is the normal pattern at every site in the world. People learn, people improve, techniques are refined, knowledge accumulates. The later works surpass the earlier ones. This is how human culture works. We build on what came before. At Gobekli Tepe, the opposite is true. The oldest layer III, dating to roughly 9,600 to 8,800 BC, contains the largest pillars, the most ambitious enclosures, the finest and most detailed carvings, the most complex arrangements of stones. This is the layer with the 5-meter pillars and the 10-ton blocks and the exquisite animal reliefs that seem to leap from the surface of the stone. This is the layer that takes your breath away. The newer layer II, dating to roughly 8,800 to 8,000 BC, is smaller in every dimension. The pillars are shorter, some only 1.5 meters tall. The enclosures are more modest in diameter. The carvings are simpler, less detailed, less technically accomplished, less assured, as though the memory of how to do this, the tradition of excellence, was fading, growing weaker with each generation. The builders did not improve over time. They did not learn and grow and build bigger and better. They started at their peak, at a level of artistic and architectural accomplishment that is genuinely astonishing, and they declined. Over the course of 800 years, the tradition diminished, shrank, lost its power and its precision, and eventually stopped altogether. What does this mean? The implications are profound and unsettling. One interpretation, the one that Schmidt himself favored, is that Gobekli Tepe does not represent the beginning of a building tradition. It represents the end of one, the culmination, the grand finale, the final, greatest expression of a cultural practice that had been developing for centuries or perhaps millennia before the first stone was carved at this particular hilltop. If that is true, then what came before? Where are the earlier sites? Where are the first attempts? The practice runs. The smaller, less ambitious, less technically accomplished precursors to this extraordinary monument. Where is the learning curve? We do not know. They have not been found. Perhaps they were built of wood rather than stone and have long since rotted away, returned to the earth from which they came. Perhaps they lie beneath other hills in this region, unidentified by surface surveys, undetected by radar, waiting in the darkness for someone to recognize them. Perhaps the tradition that produced Gobekli Tepe stretches back much further than we can currently trace, into a deeper past that has left no visible archaeological trace, a past that we can only infer from the extraordinary sophistication of what we have found. The oldest carvings at Gobekli Tepe are the finest. The first things we find are the best things that were made. It is as though we have opened a book at the final chapter, and all the earlier chapters have been torn away. We are reading the ending of a story whose beginning we may never know. Let yourself drift a little further now. The story is unwinding like a spool of golden thread in the dark, slowly, gently, and you do not need to follow every strand. You do not need to hold the thread. Just let the words come and go. Let the images rise and fall, like the hills of the Anatolian landscape, like the slow swell of the sea, like the rhythm of your own breathing. Imagine yourself lying on the ancient hilltop. The grass is soft beneath you, dry and fragrant in the night air. The earth is warm from the day's sun, and that warmth is rising up through your back, through your shoulders, through the base of your skull. Above you, the stars are turning, slowly, imperceptibly, the same slow turn they have made every night for 12,000 years, for 100,000 years, for 1 billion years. Your body is heavy, pleasantly, deliciously heavy, the kind of heavy that comes when every muscle has finally agreed to rest, when the long negotiation between effort and surrender is over, and surrender has won, and it feels not like defeat but like the most natural thing in the world. Your fingers are still, your toes are still, the small of your back has settled into the earth, and the earth has accepted you, and there is nothing between you and sleep but a few more words, a few more breaths, a few more moments of this quiet, ancient, star-filled dark. Who were the builders? Let us try to imagine them, not as abstractions, not as archaeological categories or entries in a textbook, but as people, real people, with faces and voices and hands calloused from work and eyes that reflected the same firelight and the same starlight that we see today. They were hunter-gatherers of the pre-pottery Neolithic period. This is the technical term. It means they lived before the invention of pottery, before the domestication of animals, before the deliberate cultivation of crops. They lived in small bands, perhaps 20 or 30 strong, moving through the landscape of southeastern Turkey in a seasonal rhythm that had been refined over hundreds of generations, in spring and summer. They followed the herds of gazelle as they moved across the open grassland. They hunted auroch and wild boar in the woodland edges, using spears tipped with finely worked flint points. They gathered wild grain, einkorn and emmer and barley, harvesting the ripe heads with flint-bladed sickles and collecting the grain in woven baskets or animal skin bags. They wore animal skins, tanned hides of gazelle and deer, scraped clean with flint scrapers, softened by working and pulling, sewn together with bone needles threaded with sinew. Perhaps they decorated their garments with beads made from shells traded from the distant Mediterranean or from small, colored stones drilled with painstaking care. Their hair was long, perhaps tied back with leather thongs, perhaps adorned with feathers or bone pins, or the small, delicate teeth of foxes. Their tools were flint, beautiful, carefully knapped flint, each piece struck from a core with precise, controlled blows that sent flakes flying along predetermined fracture lines. This is not a simple skill. Flint knapping is an art form. It requires a deep understanding of the stone's structure, the angles of force, the way that conchoidal fracture propagates through crystalline material. A master flint knapper can produce blades as thin as window glass and as sharp as a surgical scalpel. They also used obsidian, volcanic glass that is even sharper than flint, sourced from volcanic regions hundreds of kilometers to the north and east. The presence of obsidian at Gobekli Tepe tells us that these people were connected to wider trading networks. They were not isolated. They were part of a web of relationships and exchanges that spanned a vast area of the ancient Near East. They had no written language. They had no numbers that we know of. They had no alphabet or script or any system of recording information in symbols on a flat surface. But they had art. The carvings at Gobekli Tepe prove beyond any doubt that they had a rich and complex symbolic world. A world of meaning and story and belief and imagination that they expressed with extraordinary skill through the medium of carved stone. And they had belief, some shared understanding of the cosmos and their place within it, some vision of powers and forces beyond the visible world, was strong enough to drive them to move 10-ton stones with nothing but muscle and rope and determination. Strong enough to organize hundreds of people from dozens of separate bands into a coordinated workforce. Strong enough to sustain a building project that spanned generations. Strong enough to create something that would endure for 12 millennia. We underestimate them. We have always underestimated them. We look at the label hunter-gatherer and we imagine simple people leading simple lives, people whose entire existence was consumed by the daily struggle to find food and avoid predators. People without sophistication, without depth, without dreams. Gobekli Tepe tells us that we are profoundly wrong. These people were as intelligent and creative and spiritually driven as any people who have ever lived. They had minds as complex as ours, dreams as vivid, fears as deep, questions as searching, and a capacity for wonder and collective action that moved them to carve temples from the living rock of the earth. 12,000 years before anyone thought such a thing was possible. Try to imagine their daily lives during the building season. Dawn breaking over the Harran Plain, the light golden and warm, spreading across the grassland from the east, painting the hills amber and rose, mist rising from the low ground near the streams, the camp stirring, fires being relit from the banked embers of the night, food being prepared, flatbread made from wild grain ground on flat stones, cooked on hot stones pulled from the fire with wooden tongs, strips of dried gazelle meat. Handfuls of roasted almonds and pistachios gathered from the hillsides, water from a nearby spring carried in leather bags. The workers gathering their tools, flint chisels with edges resharpened that morning, heavy stone mauls for the rough work, coils of braided rope, wooden levers, perhaps baskets of sand for grinding and polishing, walking up the hill in the early light, following a path worn by thousands of feet over many seasons, to the quarry or to the half-finished enclosure where the work continues. The sound of stone on stone, a steady rhythmic percussion, like a heartbeat, like a drum, chip, 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 the flint biting into the limestone, a tiny flake flying, another, hour after hour, day after day, the pillar slowly, taking shape beneath the patient hands of the carver, the outline of a fox emerging from the raw stone, a vulture's wings spreading, a snake's body coiling. And around the workers, the landscape, the wide plain stretching to the south, golden with ripe grain, the hills rising to the north, green with pistachio and oak, the circling of hawks in the high blue sky, the distant sound of gazelle hooves on hard earth, a crane calling from a marsh in the valley, and the wind, always the wind, moving through the grass and across the hilltop and through the half-finished enclosures where the stone figures stood in their half-completed circles, patient and silent, waiting for their companions to join them. What would it have sounded like inside a completed enclosure? What would it have felt like to stand within that circle of towering stone figures at night, with a fire burning in the center and the stars overhead? The acoustic properties of circular stone structures are well documented by modern researchers. Sound reflects off curved walls in remarkable ways. It gathers, it amplifies, it focuses. A whisper spoken at one side of a stone circle can be heard with startling clarity at the other side, even across a space 30 meters wide. A drumbeat becomes a pulse that does not simply reach your ears. It fills the entire space, resonating in your chest, vibrating in your bones, becoming a physical sensation as much as an auditory one. Imagine standing in Enclosure D, the largest of the excavated circles. The T-pillars rising above you, 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters tall, their smooth surfaces catching the firelight, warm and golden, the carved animals seeming to shift and breathe in the flickering glow, a fox turning its head, a snake sliding down the stone, a vulture slowly spreading its wings, the shadows moving across the reliefs, giving the illusion of life, of movement, of creatures watching from the stone. The stars are visible overhead. The enclosures were likely open to the sky or covered only partially with hides or wooden beams that allowed the heavens to look down into the circle of stones. The Milky Way would have been directly above, a river of silver light pouring down into the enclosure, filling it with the cold, ancient glow of 100 billion distant suns. Perhaps there was drumming, animal skin drums stretched over hollow logs or frames of bent wood, a deep, steady beat that echoed off the pillars and filled the enclosure with rhythm, a pulse that synchronized the breathing of everyone present, that drew them together into a single organism of shared awe, the beat slowing, until it matched the resting heartbeat of the listeners, and then going slower still, drawing them down into trance or meditation or whatever state of consciousness these rituals were designed to produce. Perhaps there was chanting, voices raised together in the dark, dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, joining and separating and joining again, the harmonics bouncing off the curved stone walls, amplifying, multiplying, creating overtones that seemed to come from nowhere, from the stone itself, from the earth, from the sky, an almost physical sensation of sound, wrapping around you, entering you, making the boundary between your body and the space around you dissolve. Perhaps there was silence. Perhaps the most sacred moments at Gobekli Tepe were the quiet ones, the moments when the fire burned low and the drums fell silent and the people stood together in the dark, surrounded by their stone ancestors, beneath the vast, indifferent, astonishing sky, and simply listened to the wind, to the distant call of a nightjar on the plain, to their own heartbeats, to whatever it was they believed spoke to them from the silence between the stars. We do not know what rites were performed. We do not know what songs were sung or what stories were told or what oaths were sworn. But standing in that space, surrounded by those towering figures, beneath that vast and ancient sky, you would have felt something deep, something that came from a place below thought and beyond language, something that words have never quite been able to catch. The numinous, the sacred, the awe, the feeling that the world is larger and stranger and more beautiful than you can comprehend, and that you are part of it, connected to it, woven into its fabric as surely as the grass is woven into the hillside, and that this moment, this breath, this heartbeat is enough, is everything, is all there is. Your breathing is very slow now, very gentle, like the breathing of someone who is nearly asleep. And perhaps you have already crossed that soft, blurred threshold between waking and dreaming, the place where the world loses its sharp edges, where sounds become colors, where thoughts become images, where the difference between here and there, between now and then, between yourself and the ancient hilltop, ceases to matter. Stay there for a moment, right at that threshold. It is a beautiful place, a peaceful place, like the space between the pillars, like the silence between the drum beats, like the pause between one breath and the next, that moment of perfect stillness when the lungs are empty and the body waits, patient and trusting for the next breath to come. It always comes, the breath always comes. You do not need to make it happen, you do not need to think about it. It comes on its own, like the dawn, like the spring, like the slow, sure return of warmth after a long, cold night. Klaus Schmidt devoted the rest of his life to Gobekli Tepe. From that first visit in the autumn of 1994 until his sudden death 20 years later, He returned to the Hilltop season after season, year after year, excavating, documenting, photographing, measuring, drawing, thinking, writing, arguing with colleagues, presenting at conferences, giving interviews. Trying, always trying, to make the world understand the magnitude of what had been found on that unremarkable hill in the dry steppe of southeastern Turkey. He was a quiet man, thoughtful, measured in his speech, not given to grand pronouncements or dramatic claims or the kind of breathless hyperbole that sometimes infects archaeological announcements. He let the evidence speak. He let the pillars tell their own story. But he understood the magnitude of his discovery better than anyone. He knew that Gobekli Tepe changed the story of human civilization in ways that would take decades to fully absorb. He knew that the pillars demanded a new narrative, a new understanding of what hunter-gatherers were capable of, a new respect for the intelligence and the ambition and the spiritual depth of the deep past. He fought for funding, which was never as plentiful as the site deserved. He fought for recognition, which came slowly at first and then in an overwhelming wave. He fought against skeptics who could not bring themselves to believe that such a site could exist, who looked for ways to explain it away, to push the dates forward, to reclassify the builders as early farmers rather than hunter-gatherers. Anything to make Gobekli Tepe fit the old narrative rather than requiring a new one. Schmidt held firm. The radiocarbon dates were solid. The absence of domestic remains was clear. The evidence was in the ground. The pillars spoke for themselves. He died on the 15th of July, 2014, in Erlangen, Germany. He was 59 years old. He had been swimming. His heart stopped. It was sudden and unexpected, and it robbed the world of one of the most important archaeologists of the modern era. He had been working on a comprehensive monograph about Gobekli Tepe, a detailed, definitive account of everything he had found and everything he believed it meant. The manuscript was unfinished at his death. Like the unfinished pillar in the quarry, it remained incomplete. A reminder that even the most dedicated work can be cut short. But his legacy is the hilltop itself, the excavations he began, the questions he raised, the old certainties he shattered, the new possibilities he opened. After Schmidt's death, the work continued. The German Archaeological Institute maintained the excavation under new leadership. New teams of archaeologists and specialists arrived each season. New technologies were applied to the site, ground-penetrating radar to map the unexcavated enclosures, photogrammetry to create precise three-dimensional models of the carvings, isotopic analysis of the bones found in the rubble filled to determine where the animals had lived and what they had eaten. DNA analysis to explore the genetic relationships of the people who gathered here. In 2018, Gobekli Tepe was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Turkish government had already built a protective shelter over the main enclosures, a great curving roof of steel and tensile fabric that shields the pillars from the weather while allowing visitors to walk among them and stand where the builders once stood. The hilltop that had been ignored for millennia, that had been dismissed as a medieval cemetery by a survey team in 1963, that had been grazed by sheep and scratched by plows, was now one of the most famous and most visited archaeological sites on Earth. And 95% of it remains unexcavated. 95%. Let that number settle in your mind. 20 enclosures identified by ground-penetrating radar, only 4 fully uncovered. 16 circles of massive carved pillars still buried beneath the grass. Thousands of square meters of ceremonial space still sealed beneath the rubble that the builders packed in 10,000 years ago. What else is down there? More enclosures, certainly. The radar is clear. More carvings, almost certainly. Perhaps animals we have not yet seen. Perhaps symbols we have not yet encountered. Perhaps enclosures with completely different arrangements, different sizes, different orientations. Perhaps evidence that will answer some of the questions that still haunt us. How were the builders organized? Was there a leader, a priest, a chief architect? How were the workers fed during the building seasons? What specific rituals were performed within the enclosures? What did the builders believe about death and the afterlife and the powers that moved the stars? Perhaps the answers are 10 meters below the surface right now. Perhaps they are there, in the dark, in the silence, in the patient stone, waiting for someone to come and uncover them. Perhaps the most extraordinary discoveries at Gobekli Tepe have not yet been made. Perhaps the pillars that will truly change everything are still hidden in the earth. Their carved animals watching nothing, their stone hands folded across their stone bellies, waiting. Waiting as they have waited for 100 centuries. Let your mind release the questions now. Let them settle like sediment in a river after the current slows, drifting slowly down through the layers of thought and awareness and wakefulness, down through the gentle dark, to rest on the floor of your mind like rubble filling an ancient enclosure. They will be there when you wake, but for now, let them go, let them sink, let them settle. The hill is quiet. The stars are moving in their ancient circles. The wind is a constant, gentle, unchanging sound, like breathing, like the world itself breathing in its sleep. In and out, slow and deep and steady and eternal. Imagine the world moving forward from Gobekli Tepe, slowly, century by century, generation by generation. The enclosures are buried beneath their blankets of rubble. The hill settles and compacts. Grass grows over the surface. Wildflowers bloom in the spring rains. The shape of the mound softens and rounds. It becomes just another hill in the landscape, unremarkable, unnamed, forgotten. And down on the plain, everything changes. The people who once hunted gazelle and gathered wild grain begin to do something different. They begin to plant. They begin to tend. They begin to stay in one place through the turning of the year, through the seasons of rain and growth and harvest and rest. The first permanent villages appear, clusters of small mud brick houses with flat roofs and storage rooms and courtyards where children play. Cattle Hoyuk in central Anatolia, Jericho in the Jordan Valley, Abu Huraira on the Euphrates. The Neolithic Revolution is underway. Pottery is invented. The first crude vessels, pinched from clay and dried in the sun, then hardened in fire. Weaving is invented. Plant fibers twisted into thread and thread woven into cloth. Sheep and goats are domesticated, the first animals to submit to human management. Cattle are brought under control. The wild auroch tamed over many generations into the docile cow. The wolf becomes the dog. The wild boar becomes the pig. Fields of einkorn wheat spread across the hillsides. Irrigation channels are dug to carry water from the rivers to the fields. Grain is stored in sealed jars and pits. Populations grow. Villages become towns. Towns become the first cities. Uruk, Eridu, cities become kingdoms. Kingdoms become empires. Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, Assyria. Writing is invented. Law is codified. Armies are raised. Temples are built. Temples that echo, perhaps unknowingly, the circles of stone on the hilltop. Bronze is smelted. iron is forged, ships cross the seas, empires rise and fall and rise again. Greece, Rome, the spread of Christianity and Islam across the ancient Near East, the Ottoman Empire, the modern Turkish Republic. And above it all, through all of it, on the hilltop, Gobekli Tepe sleeps, buried, forgotten, silent, the temple before everything, resting beneath its blanket of earth and rubble and grass, while the civilization it may have helped to birth spreads across the globe and remakes the world. Let that image carry you now, the sleeping hill, the buried stones, the patient, dreamless silence of 12,000 years. You are sleeping too, or nearly. The boundary between the story and the dream is thinning, dissolving, like mist burning off the plain in the first warmth of the sun. The words are becoming distant, soft, blurred at their edges. You hear them the way you hear sounds from another room, present but muffled, there but not quite here. And that is exactly right. That is exactly where you should be, not fully awake, not fully asleep, but somewhere in between, in that gentle, floating, borderless space where everything is warm and dark and slow and still, where the difference between lying in your bed and lying on an ancient hilltop under the stars has ceased to matter. There is one more thing to consider before you drift away entirely, one more thought to carry with you into the dark. The builders of Gobekli Tepe looked up at the same sky you see from your window on clear nights, the same moon, waxing and waning in its eternal cycle, the same stars burning in the dark, the same slow wheel of constellations turning through the heavens, rising in the east, arching overhead, setting in the west, in a pattern so steady and so reliable that it must have seemed like the very heartbeat of the cosmos. 12,000 years is an almost incomprehensible span of time. 400 generations of human beings have lived and loved and feared and hoped and died since the first pillar was carved from the limestone bedrock of that hill. Empires have risen and crumbled to dust. Languages have been born and spoken and forgotten. Entire civilizations have flourished and vanished without a trace. The world has been remade 1,000 times over. And yet the sky is the same. The stars have shifted slightly. The slow wobble of the Earth's axis called precession has moved the constellations a few degrees from where they were, but they are recognizably, unmistakably the same stars. Orion still hunts across the winter sky, his belt of 3 bright stars burning as steadily as they did when the builders watched them from the hilltop. The Pleiades still cluster together like a handful of scattered diamonds dropped on black velvet. The Milky Way still spills from horizon to horizon on clear, dark, moonless nights. The same river of light that poured down into the stone enclosures 12,000 years ago. The builders saw all of this. They lay on their backs on the hilltop, on the same dry grass that grows there still, and they looked up, and they felt what you feel, the vastness, the beauty, the quiet, aching, almost painful wonder of it, the sense that the universe is so large and so old and so indifferent, and yet so beautiful, that the only possible response is awe and silence and gratitude, and the slow, steady breathing of a creature that knows it is small and does not mind. They felt small, they felt connected, they felt the pull of something beyond themselves, something that they could not name or explain or fully understand, but that they could carve in stone, and so they did. They carved it in foxes and lions and vultures and snakes. They carved it in the folded arms and silent faces of their T-shaped figures. They carved it in circles of stone that echoed the circles of the stars. They carved the awe. They carved the wonder. They carved the question that has no answer, but that every human being has asked at least once while staring up at the night sky. And 12,000 years later, lying in your warm bed, in the quiet dark, with the covers pulled up and your breathing slow and your mind drifting gently towards sleep, you feel it too, that same pull, that same wonder, that same ancient, wordless, bone-deep recognition that you are part of something immense and beautiful and deeply, mysteriously alive. Something that was here before you and will be here after you. Something that connects you to those builders on the hilltop. Across a gulf of time so vast that it should make connection impossible, and yet does not. You are connected by the stars, by the wind, by the simple, sacred fact of being human. The wind is moving across the hilltop. You can hear it, or imagine you can hear it, a low, steady, unending sound, like breathing, like the earth breathing in its sleep, like a whisper in a language older than any language spoken today, a language of wind and stone and grass and stars, a language that needs no translation, that speaks directly to the body and the blood and the quiet, ancient part of the brain that remembers what it was like to sleep on the bare earth under the open sky. The stars are turning overhead, slowly, so slowly that you cannot see them move, but they are moving, they are always moving, the great wheel of the cosmos, turning, turning, as it has turned since before there were eyes to see it or minds to wonder at it, turning tonight, as it turned 12,000 years ago, as it will turn 12,000 years from now. And below the hilltop, in the dark, in the earth, the pillars stand. The carved animals watch with their stone eyes. The silent figures hold their hands against their bellies and wait. They are not impatient. They are not anxious. They are stone. They have all the time in the world. They have been waiting for 12,000 years. They can wait a little longer. They have been waiting for you. Your body has become very heavy now. Your arms are heavy. Your legs are heavy. Your eyelids are impossibly heavy, weighted with the gentle, irresistible pull of sleep. Even your thoughts have a pleasant weight to them, as though each thought is a smooth, warm stone, polished by centuries of dark water, settling slowly through the deep, drifting down, down, past the layers of the day, past the surface clutter of worries and plans and unfinished business, down to the bottom, to the floor. To the quiet, sandy bottom of the deepest part of you, where everything is still. Let the stones settle, let the thoughts drift down, let everything become still as the buried pillars, as still as the earth that holds them, as still as the silence that has filled those enclosures for 10,000 years. The hilltop, the stars, the wind, the silence. The ancient, patient, bottomless silence of a place that holds the oldest dreams of humankind. You are breathing in the rhythm of the wind now, slow, steady, effortless, each breath a gentle wave, rising, cresting, falling, rising, cresting, falling, the tide of sleep moving in, closer and closer, washing over you in soft, warm, unhurried pulses. Each wave a little deeper, each wave a little warmer, each wave carrying you a little further from the shore of waking, out into the deep, calm, boundless water of sleep. The carvings on the pillars are fading in your mind's eye. The foxes are becoming shadows. The vultures are folding their great wings and settling on their stone perches. The snakes are sliding into the dark cracks between the stones. The lions are closing their carved mouths. The scorpions are lowering their tails. One by one, the animals of Gobekli Tepe are going to sleep. And you are going with them. Down through the layers, down through the rubble and the bone and the broken flint and the ancient, compacted earth, down through the centuries, down through the millennia, down through the silence, down to the place where the oldest stones rest on the bed bedrock of the hill, where the first carvings were made, where the finest art was created, at the very beginning, at the deepest layer, at the heart of the mystery. The beginning that was also an end, the first chapter that was also the last, the deepest layer, the most beautiful, the most mysterious, the most accomplished, waiting in the dark, as it has always waited, as it will always wait. You are there now, in the deepest layer, in the oldest enclosure. The pillars tower above you, but they are not frightening. They are not cold or threatening or alien. They are comforting. They are the stone guardians of a 12,000-year sleep. They watch over you the way mountains watch over valleys, the way the sky watches over the earth. They have been watching over this hilltop since before the pyramids were built, before the Bronze Age began, before the first city rose from the Mesopotamian mud, before the first king sat on the first throne. They will watch over you tonight. The fire is burning low, the last fire of the evening, banked to glowing embers in the center of the enclosure. The light is orange and soft and warm, pulsing gently, like a heartbeat, like the slow, steady rhythm of deep sleep. The warmth reaches you, not as heat but as comfort, as the simple animal reassurance of warmth in the dark, like the warmth of your bed, like the warmth of your covers against your skin, like the warmth of the air you are breathing, in and out, in and out. You are warm, you are safe, you are held by the bed, by the dark, by the story, by the ancient patient stones. The drumming has stopped. If there ever was drumming, the chanting has faded. If there ever was chanting, the only sound now is the wind, and even the wind is growing quiet, settling, dying to a whisper, to a murmur, to a breath, to nothing. The silence. The deep, ancient, bottomless silence of Gobekli Tepe, the silence that has filled these enclosures for 10,000 years, a silence so deep and so old that it has weight, it has texture, it presses against you like a warm blanket, like the darkness itself is holding you, cradling you, rocking you gently toward the edge of sleep. And in that silence, sleeping. Not the restless, fitful sleep of a troubled mind, not the thin, fragile sleep that breaks at every sound and every shifting shadow, but the deep, heavy, unshakable sleep of stone, the sleep of the buried pillars, the sleep of the hill itself, the sleep of the bedrock beneath the hill, the kind of sleep that lasts for 10,000 years, and when you wake from it, you are still whole, still beautiful, still exactly where you were placed, unchanged by time, untouched by the centuries. Perfect in your stillness. You are sinking into that sleep now, layer by layer, the way the builders buried their temple, layer by layer, handful by handful, stone by stone, breath by breath, each layer taking you deeper, each layer making you heavier, each layer wrapping you in another fold of warm, soft, ancient dark. The stars above the hilltop are beginning to fade, not because the dawn is coming, not yet, but because your eyes are closing. The universe is narrowing, gently, softly, to a single point of warmth and dark and perfect stillness. The vast Anatolian sky, the billion scattered stars, the great turning wheel of the cosmos, all of it is folding inward, inward like a flower closing at dusk, to this moment, this breath, this bed, this body, this sleep. Builders knew something that the modern world has largely forgotten but is slowly beginning to remember. They knew that the need to create is as old as the need to eat, that the urge to build something beautiful, something lasting, something that speaks to the stars and answers the wind, is not a luxury that comes after survival has been secured. It is survival. It is part of what makes us human. Without it, we are merely clever animals. With it, we are something else. Something that can look up at the night sky and feel the vastness and the beauty and respond, not with fear, but with art, with circles of stone, with carved animals watching from the darkness, with hands folded in reverence across a limestone belly. They stood on their hilltop 12,000 years ago, those unknown, unnamed, unremembered people, and they looked at the wild, beautiful, dangerous, astonishing world around them, and they decided to make something, not a weapon, not a tool, not a shelter, something that served no practical purpose at all, something that existed only to express the inexpressible, to say what words could not say, to answer a question that had no answer. And they made it, with nothing but stone and flint and rope, and their own extraordinary, underestimated, world-changing human hands. The pillars still stand, the animals still watch, the temple before everything still waits beneath its hill, older than farming, older than pottery, older than metal and wheels and writing and cities and empires and everything we call civilization. It is the oldest monument on Earth, the first cathedral, the original sacred space, the place where the human desire to build something greater than ourselves first found expression in stone. And tonight it is yours, this story, this hill, these stars, these silent, patient, watchful stones. They are all yours. They have been waiting 12,000 years for this moment, for you, for this breath, for this sleep. Sleep now. Sleep the way the hill sleeps, deep, still, patient, full of wonders hidden in the dark, waiting to be uncovered, in time, in the slow, unhurried, generous fullness of time. The wind has stopped, the stars are gone, the fire is out, the carved animals have closed their stone eyes. There is nothing left but warmth, and dark, and the gentle, steady, eternal rhythm of your breathing. In and out, in and out, like the wind across the ancient plain, like the tide of centuries rising and falling, like the breath of the earth itself, slow and deep and endlessly kind. Sleep, and let the oldest stones in the world keep watch over your dreaming. Thank you for listening, and sweet dreams. If you enjoyed this, there are more stories waiting for you.